Hello and welcome to a Friday afternoon edition of the Scotland Rugby News podcast in the 1872 Cup build-up. There's loads to talk about, a new appointment in charge of women's rugby as well. But before that, a quick word from our sponsor. Scotland Rugby News is brought to you by S1 Jobs. If it's time to hand in your transfer request, then head over to s1jobs.com and upload your CV today. There are thousands of jobs all across Scotland, and you can find the one for you at S1 Jobs. So go on, start searching right now in time for Christmas. Joined by the man himself, Gavin Harper. Gavin, plenty going on this week.
Yeah, look, it's been another interesting week. Obviously, it started at Scotstoun, but it'll finish at Hampden. Yeah, there's been loads in between, which I'm sure we'll cover. But yeah, another interesting week. Never a dull moment in the world of Scottish rugby.
The marketing teams and social media teams have been going supersonic with their 1872 content. Guess who? Recreating McTominay's goals. There's been all sorts going on. Ticket sales for Hampden, any ideas?
I think close to 20,000. Glasgow got 27,000 last season. I haven't asked for an update today, but I think that's kind of the figure that we were told certainly at the start of the week. Glasgow obviously went early with their team announcement in the bid. I think partly maybe there was a bit of mind games in that from Franco, but I think that was also to try and drive ticket sales. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what the crowd's like. I know a lot of people were put off by Hampden last year, but yeah, I think it would be a shame if it's if there's a poor crowd, or certainly fewer than there was 12 months ago.
Yeah, interesting. I've got views more on the timing of these games, and I've harped on about this before. I like the idea of it being the first game of the season and last game of the season, but it seems like is it to do with travel that they want these local derbies around this time of year?
Yeah, I think so. I think because although Owen Cross, the Irish referee, is refereeing this one, it tends to be there's Scottish rugby referees, there's obviously the two local teams, so there's not huge amounts of travel, which then means people are at home round the sort of festive period, I suppose. I don't disagree that the first and last game of the season would be interesting. I think the first game of the season, everybody would be available. There'd be no doubt you would have Scotland internationals there. End of the season, hopefully both teams would have something to play for.
And even if not, though, they would still have something to play for because it would be meaningful.
It'd be a meaningful end to the season.
Yeah, and
the other thing I think about
the weather, the spectator experience would be, and the Saturday before Christmas. I mean, and this one's quite far away from Christmas, so I don't know if that's people have still got stuff to do. People are still working. Whereas last year it was slightly closer, and it felt like right, everybody's off. If it was the 22nd or 23rd, it feels like right, I've probably done everything I'm going to do. I'm free to go to the rugby. Whereas just being 5 days away, it feels like there's more. I don't know. You kind of right for doing wrong. I hope it's a good atmosphere, whatever the size of the crowd. I hope it's a good atmosphere because last year that was part of the issue because the game was so one-sided. The atmosphere got sucked out of the place.
Yeah, and look, I think Edinburgh have addressed that this week that they didn't turn up for. And Sean Everett said 40 minutes. I would dispute that and say closer to 70. And they were lucky. Bohan scored 2 tries late on, and they got some sort of credibility on the scoreboard. But I thought you're right, for at least the first 50, 60 minutes, like it was such a no contest that it was sort of difficult for people to get behind. Hopefully that's not the case tomorrow, but the two teams have obviously had such contrasting weekends just gone that it's they're definitely going into in different sort of spirits, I think.
Yeah, obviously being stadium announcer at the Hive, when the games are good, I didn't really have to do anything because the crowd is generating the atmosphere. It's my sort of work kicks in when it's a bit flat or it's one-sided, or but folk would rather not have me on the Darroy making their ears bleed. They would rather, have the sense of, right, we're on top here, or we're defending here, or what a great break, and they generate the atmosphere themselves. And that, but you don't get that in one-sided affairs. You don't get that in, I hope Hampden, I hope the crowd are sort of, I know they're going to be concentrated on the touchlines, and I hope they can generate some atmosphere. I got a message through one of the Glasgow Worthies. He sent me a video of the kids who have created a chant to wind up Edinburgh fans. So it would be good if that is actually something that they've circulated in the fan groups and they're able to get going and try and sort of poke the bear a wee bit and get Edinburgh to retaliate. That will be class, because that's what you want in a derby atmosphere. You want that to-ing and fro-ing.
Yeah, you do. And look at we'll talk about all the build-up, but Jack Dempsey's obviously sort of poked the bear a bit this week by calling Edinburgh Glasgow's little brother. And kind of laid down that challenge to Liam McConnell, Freddie Douglas, etc., to basically stake their claim for Scotland places. But he used a couple of words, and now I can't remember what they were, but they were about the rivalry and about maybe there being a nastiness. It's just not a personal. And I think we do need to get away from this idea that, yes, these teams are both owned by Scottish Rugby. If we're going to bill it as a rivalry, you need players to talk like that. You need players to generate some sort of feeling between the two squads, because like Munster and Leinster are both, players are centrally contracted by the IRFU. There's no disputing when they play at Thomond Park or at the RDS, they don't like each other. They're, it's very tribal in that sense. Whereas Edinburgh and Glasgow all feels a wee bit nice. As we've said before here, most Glasgow fans' second team will be Edinburgh, and most Edinburgh fans' second team is probably Glasgow.
Yep.
But if we're going to claim it's this rivalry, you need people to say, actually, we want to beat these, or from Ewan Ashman's point of view earlier in the week, actually, we know how good Glasgow are, but we've got points to prove, and it's up to us to go and sort of knock them off their perch. Like,
I think that's we're going down a bit of an alleyway here, but I think we'll finish it. But the likes of Ewan Ashman has only played for Edinburgh. Jack Dempsey has only played for Glasgow. But you've got Jamie Dobie, who was schooled in Edinburgh and plays in Glasgow. You've got Ross Thompson, who has played for Glasgow and is now playing for Edinburgh. You've got, so the Leinster-Munster one, although I don't think Mr. Ione is from Leinster or Dublin or the surrounding area, but largely those players are from those areas where it's not quite as maybe as clear cut as that. But the players, certain players do talk quite openly about it. Some don't quite have that in them. And a lot of them are very good mates. There's Adam Hastings last week. I mean, what a great gag to pull. Is the best player in the world coming to Scotstown? Oh, Blair Kinghorn, yeah, like that's genius. I mean, those two are like Joey and Chandler. Those two.
Yeah, and so. But you know what? Like, good on Adam, because he could have sort of swatted that away, given a really sort of straight answer. Yeah, Antoine Dupont's a great player. But I thought, actually, that's not Adam's character. And it was nice to see, and I think the Glasgow guys definitely give you that. There's a bit of, like, every time Dempsey, or we got Sione Tuipulotu after the game, and that's like, for us in the media, it's like a dream, because he just tells you exactly, there's no media answers, he tells you exactly what he thinks. And every time those guys are put up for press, like I obviously spoke to Xander, he's a bit the same. There are other guys who maybe give you a wee bit less, a wee bit more of the media training comes out. And you think, like, actually, we should embrace those characters. Jack Dempsey saying it's harder to win a Six Nations than it is to win the World Cup. Like, fair enough. If that's what if you genuinely believe that, you should be able to say it.
At least it's a view. Do you know what made me laugh this week was Henry Pollock. Did you see his bit? I would be boo me.
Yes, yeah, I did think that, and then I thought, good, I'm glad we agree on one thing, Henry.
But and I'm not really a Henry Pollock fan, but at least that shows a bit of awareness, and he kind of knows who he is. And there's been I've seen a few of his teammates saying like they feel like he's his carer, and stuff like that. And
Yeah,
I mean, he's a kid, and he's a precocious talent, and aye,
he's also a kid that's had this incredible year, has gone on the Lions tour, has had an unbelievable 12 months, and who's quite unapologetically himself. Now, whether you like it or not, we can't constantly say rugby needs more characters, rugby, and then every time we get somebody who's a bit different, Joe Marler, Henry Pollock, think of like some of the criticism that's levelled at Blair Kinghorn, and we say, oh, I don't actually like that. We're not doing ourselves any favours.
Like when Finn gets in trouble for smiling because he doesn't care. Aye, because smiling means you didn't care. Anyway, exactly. Right, teams. Yes, let's go Glasgow first. Franco went early. I did chuckle because when Scotland Rugby News posted it, somebody came on saying, "Oh, have you gone a bit early?" as if you'd leaked the team, which made me chuckle because that would go down like a turd sandwich at HQ. But Franco did go early, whatever the reasoning was. And I did hear there's a bit of talk about teams being announced the same as football an hour and a half before kickoff, which would be a massive change for rugby. But Franco went the complete opposite, did a bit of Razzie and just named it very early and went, right, here we are. Probably not really a surprise in there, other than maybe Dobie on the ding-a-ling.
Yeah, I think so. I think even that, Josh Mackay pulled his hamstring against Toulouse. So you already, in our minds or in my mind, certainly, I was on the way home trying to predict a Glasgow team, and because he rested so many for the trip to the disastrous Scarlets game, I always thought Franco would go strong both European games, then both 1872 Cup, then rest at the start of the new year. So you're then thinking, okay, how do you make minimal changes? Dobie did well on the wing against Toulouse, really well actually. George Horn had a big impact at 9, so that can all make sense. And it means you just shift Ollie Smith back to fullback, and that kind of covers you. Although Dan Lancaster was very, very good when he came on at 15. I was a bit dubious. I wondered if he might play at 10 and Adam would move to fullback. But Dan Lancaster sort of slotted in at 15, nearly scored a try, looked pretty good.
He's a player. I'm not sure he's Scotland, but he's the kind of guy that is going to give a lot of good minutes to Glasgow.
Yeah, I agree. I think I'm yet to. I think he's played less rugby than I would have expected at this time of the season. But
is that maybe because Adam Hastings has played more than we?
Yeah, and I think Adam's like I would say Adam's been brilliant. And we spoke to him last week, and he was talking about. Actually, I've loved this because, and again, touch wood, I've been fit the whole season, and that's what is Scottish rugby fans. That's what everybody wants. So hopefully that continues. But I think we're still probably trying to work out where Dan Lancaster's level is. He obviously went from Ealing to Racing, which feels like a big jump, then back to Glasgow. So I'm not really sure where his level is. I think you're probably right that he's not maybe Scotland yet.
Yeah, and that's it. And until he's played more, it's difficult. But it just, we spoke about this when we were just chatting this week on the phone, and you'd said that about him coming on at fullback. But my kind of feeling is he's one of those guys. He's a rugby player, and he's a rugby player that his IQ seems to be reasonably high, which means he can play at 10 and 15. And it wasn't that long ago, especially in this country, where it was almost assumed that if you wore number 10, you could wear number 15.
Yeah. Yeah, no, totally. And like he's played a bit at 12 as well, so like there's obviously a few strings to his bow. I think he'll get a chance probably at the start of the year, and then obviously around the Six Nations to sort of stake a bit more of a claim. But no, I was really impressed. I thought he did well, but you know that second half from Glasgow last week was. I think you and I could have played, and we maybe would have looked good at some point.
But just like there's a real statement that you can cower, and sometimes, and I don't care what level you get to, sometimes you play the shirt and the reputation rather than what's in front of you. And there was a lot of talk about DuPont and the team that was coming, and to a certain extent we did that before Toulon came to Edinburgh. We were talking
Yeah.
up Nonu, and then he doesn't even make it in the match day squad, but he comes to run a boot and hold a bag in the warm up. And a lot of the focus was probably on them. That's one where I would love to be a fly on the wall in the changing room. Please don't put cameras in the changing room because I don't need to see it. But I would love, like, my nose is really bothering me. Did it go old school of, boys, pull your finger out? You're not playing against the Harlem Globetrotters here. Like, it's time to dig deep. And sometimes I wonder, does tactical and all that, we're learning and all, and does it just come down to actually Franco's just going to throw a teacup and tell them what he thinks and storm out and let them sort it out for the other 13 and a half minutes that they've got at half time? I would love to have been in there.
Yeah, we did. I mean, we tried our best to get Sione to sort of paint that picture after the game. And I think the one thing you get from Franco, or the impression that the players give of Franco's meetings, is that they'll be pretty direct. I think there'll be a bit of that. I'm going to tell you exactly what I thought of that, but then I'm going to give you all the reasons why you should have the belief that you can then go and turn it round. Like the after the final in Pretoria, I think one of the players had said, he basically said, we need to be within 14 points at half time and we can win. And when Glasgow were 13-0 down just before half time, they said, well, we need to stop them scoring again. I think Sione had said after the game, it felt like a 20-point win. Now, that's an easy statement to make with hindsight. But, I mean, the weather was a huge factor. But I definitely think there was an element in that first half that Glasgow played. And let's be clear, Toulouse are probably the best team in Europe. I mean, they were, at times, I don't think many teams would have stopped them in the first half. So then for Glasgow to do what they did, to me, makes it all the more remarkable. Like, I thought they were unbelievable in the second half.
I love hearing it when things can be distilled to be so simple, right? If, like, how many coaches before a game are going, if we can be 14 points or less down by half time, like that could come across as, oh no, lads, we're on a hiding here.
Yeah.
But actually to have that absolute clarity, because I know second half we're only going to get better. Like, I love hearing stuff like that. But like, just watching the score as I was refreshing, and you're like, a bit like the first 10 minutes Edinburgh against Toulon. Like, I thought I was staring a 40-50 pointer in the face. When it's 21-0 at half time, you're thinking, even if they make a couple of changes, this is getting to 35-40 points to nil.
Yeah.
And then I thought, hang on, has there been a typo here? That, but brilliant and fair play. And when you look at the team they've picked this week, like, Xander has timed his return prime, and I hope he's benefited from a lot of rest and switch off and family time, and come back hungry. We get the best Xander for Glasgow. That then means we get the best Glasgow for best Xander for Scotland. It's probably not what Edinburgh supporters want to hear, but looking at that longer term, having Xander flying. Although I am, we'll come to Edinburgh, but having Ollie starting at tight head is also exciting. That back five of the Glasgow scrum, is probably as good as it gets, which is funny because Gregor Brown then has to sit on the bench and watch.
Which is, and that probably was the other big selection call. He was so good, like the best game I've ever seen Gregor Brown play by a distance.
But you've got Williamson and Cummings to start, and obviously big news about Scotty Cummings turning down Ealing Trailfinders and Nottingham to stay with Glasgow. But you take those two off and you put on Alex Craig and Gregor Brown.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a mark of the strength and depth that Franco's built over the time, particularly up front. I think, at the start of the season, we probably all, Franco's made his point about Henkel Venter, which I think he's now labouring. But like Sebastian Cancellieri is a loss to that Glasgow squad because,
he was so consistent.
He was so consistent. You look at the injuries and say, yeah, okay, it's a chance for Afshar, but really now we want Dobie and Horn at 9, and we want a winger on the wing.
Who do you think Gregor wants at 9?
I think Gregor wants Dobie at 9. I think Gregor wants. I mean, in an ideal world, Gregor probably wants them both to be starting at 9, but we're not going to get that. I think. That's probably frustratingly for Ben Vellacott. It's one of those positions that if you look at across the board, it's maybe not the direct head-to-head Scotland shootout. Like Cammy Scott's got a chance to really stake a claim against Adam Hastings.
The centre. You think so? That's interesting.
I think he does. I think he's a fair way down the pecking order. But if Cammy Scott goes well over the next couple of weeks, he maybe just becomes another option. And it's maybe, there was the news at the start of the week that Scotland A are going to play Italy. Well, he maybe becomes part of that. And, I'm not saying it would be a road straight to international rugby because there are a lot of 10s and a lot of good 10s ahead of him. But it would be a bit of a statement. I think, so to the long answer to a relatively simple question was, I think Gregor wants both of them to play 9 regularly, but I think in a game like this, he would want Jamie to start.
Interesting. I mean, Dobie's class, Sione at 12, Staff at 13, like that back line for who is available is probably the strongest it can be. You've got a full house of Scotland internationals there.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean it's as strong as you would expect. I'm actually interested. Ollie Smith at 15. I think Gregor talked him up a fair bit in the autumn as an option at 13. I'm not sure I see it. Like I would love to know the sort of reasoning behind that. I think he's a fair way behind Hugh, obviously, Rory Hutchinson, even Stafford as an option there, Cam Redpath. So I'm interested in that and how he goes at 15 because it's a position that all of a sudden has been thrown back up in the air. Blair's obviously not having a great time of it at the minute. Tom Jordan's sort of flipping between 10 and 15 at Bristol. He was brilliant at the weekend. They absolutely demolished Poe, but he was terrific.
He's just as an aside on Tom Jordan. Sometimes players go to clubs and you wonder what the fit is.
Yeah.
But Bristol Bears and Tom Jordan, I think, is ideal.
Totally.
The way they play, the way Tom Jordan could play anywhere in that back line, and I think we would see him have games like you're talking about where he was absolutely outstanding. He could do that at 10, 12, 13, 15, but he'll play consistently in a team that suits his style and I would imagine, loves, and I think he'll be the kind of player Pat Lam will love.
Yeah, I think you can see that already.
And I would like to think that bodes well for Scotland because Scotland are no Bristol Bears and vice versa, but there's a lot of similarities there, and Pat Lam and Gregor have some similarities.
Yeah.
And Tom Jordan I think fits with both. The issue, as we've discussed often, is where do you shoehorn Tom Jordan in to that Scotland backline? But that is an aside. But George Horne, Adam Hastings, the other bit, when I look at that backline, in fact, when I look at that Glasgow team, you can actually see tries from quite a lot of them.
Yeah.
Top of the moon will probably be able to wade in and give the stats, but I reckon there's a lot of tries in that team. And then you look at the bench, you're bringing on some quality there. There's two British lads on the bench for a start. Ben Afshar, I'm a big fan of, but that's absolute bias. And Ali Miller, who's probably going to he might end up playing at centre, depending on what happens. Just that. We spoke about him as well this week. Just that proper professional, break glass in case of emergency. Right, Ali, we need you to put an 80 at number 6 or number 8, or Ali 10 minutes at 12, and he'll give you a 7 out of 10 performance, and he's pretty resilient. I've got so much time for him.
And he's a guy who, he's got like a collective probably 3 minutes over the last 2 weeks. I don't imagine Ali Miller, and I mean this in the best possible way.
I think I know where you're going with this.
I don't imagine Ali Miller on Monday morning is straight up the stairs at Scotstoun, straight to Franco's office and saying, look, this is totally unacceptable. I feel, doing a Mo Salah, I feel like you've thrown me under the bus and all this. I want out.
That's also back to real clarity of purpose.
Yeah, exactly.
I think Ali Miller knows who he is, and his role has been defined and is clear.
Yeah.
And he appears to be happy to fulfill that role. Some players might have pulled a bit of Mo Salah and said, right, but there's not actually that many places for people like that to go, because we're at saturation point. There's too many rugby players for the number of teams. So there's an element of you got to suck it up and get on with it. But Ali Miller, great team man, great squad man. He's been on Sevens trips, and he's been to where you've got a lot of time on your hands and you have to build the relationships. I've got a lot of time for him. But there's another one. Ali Miller's in Edinburgh. So the rivalry is maybe, I'm going to show you Edinburgh, rather than not necessarily a hatred, but a dislike, because he's another boy for this end of the M8.
Yeah, I was just going to say that. I actually think he played in these games last season and he was brilliant. So again, you ask a guy to step in and he just, as we say often about Glasgow, he just does a job. But just before we move on, a couple of comments. We did talk about this just at the start, but Josh must have missed us.
Come on, Josh, keep up, man. Come on, where have you been? Were you not expecting us at 1:30 on a Friday afternoon?
As if this isn't the norm. I think we're about 20,000 as far as we know. Hopefully more, but yeah, that was the last we'd heard, was sort of around 20,000. And just one last one before we move on from the point.
Hang on. Can I just comment? Josh, get back to work. All right, you're not supposed to be watching podcasts when you're supposed to be at work. So Josh, get back to work.
Lunch break. This one, Cammy Scott's come out of nowhere. Seems to be their go-to guy.
Ali, unfortunately, hasn't come out of nowhere. He's been a professional for a really long time, but he's had to kick his heels behind Jaco van der Waal when he was a kid. Ben Healy then comes. He has to sit behind him. Ross Thompson comes along the M8, and again, back to local bias. Cammy was a ball boy when I coached at Boroughmuir. I've known him since he was a kid, and I'm so glad. And that performance he put in against Toulon, I wasn't expecting that, right, from the team, never mind just for Cammy Scott, but that gave a lot of kudos to Cammy, and Gav talking about him potentially being a Scotland A player would be amazing for someone like Cammy, who's had to be really, really patient. And a bit like I was saying about Ali Miller, probably doesn't have that many options of places to go, because he's Scottish and he's been in the system for a long time. So it's not that he's come out of nowhere, it's that he's been waiting for his chance.
What I would say to that is, I think we got the high of the Toulon performance. We then got a young 10 on the back foot, made a couple of bad mistakes early on. There was a kick, he kicked the ball straight down the middle of the pitch, right decision, just got the execution all wrong, and the ball run dead. Cash got a scrum, then he threw a horrible, horrible pass to Matt Curry that just died at Matt Curry's feet. And from that, Cast scored. You could see that knocked his confidence a bit. And I wish that's where Edinburgh had those, in those types of games where not the Schumans and the Gilcos and stuff aren't playing, had a couple of more senior guys who could give somebody like that the confidence, put their arm around them and say, look, we'll take the flak for that. It wasn't your fault. Whereas at times on Sunday, it looked like he had the weight of the world on his shoulders. And I think that was a big difference from the week before.
Yeah, and on that, like that Toulon game, you know, there was so much put into it. That team would have prepped.
Yeah.
You know, he was playing with that group of players. There was real clarity. The weather dictated that he had become so important because his kicking game was crucial. And then you go into a kind of later start to the week. You're thrown together. You've got travel thrown in as well, and but so here's me going against some of the things I sometimes say. That media answer of, oh, but we'll have learnt from this, which winds me up. But that will have been something that helps.
Oh yeah,
Tammy Scott. That, and I'm glad that he gets to go again, because it could be that as a coach you turn to him and go, well, actually you didn't play that well, so we're going to give somebody else a shot. But it's no. The plan is you've played brilliantly against Toulon. Cast, you know, for as a group didn't go the way we wanted it to go, and you had so many changes to deal with during the game. But you're going again this week when we're all guns blazing going against Glasgow, and I really like that. And you know, I like Ben Healy, I like Ross Thompson, I like Cammy Scott, but there's only one of them can really play, and it's Cammy. It's got the shot, and I hope he has a real crack at it, because he's going to be so important if Edinburgh are going to be in it.
Yeah, I agree, and I think to your point, I think no matter what happens at Hampden, almost even if there is a repeat of last year, which, you know, for the spectacle's sake, let's hope there isn't. I think Cammy Scott will play at Murrayfield. I think Cammy Scott will be Edinburgh's 10 for the foreseeable, because it feels like he's been given this chance now. And I think I talked about this in relation to when Gregor took Duhan out the Scotland team. I don't think it's like when football managers change the goalie, you don't make that change for one game and then revert back to the other guy. I think you've got to stick with the guy you've given the chance to. And I think Sean will do that with Cammy Scott. Next few weeks will be interesting, because I think they could shape both teams' seasons. You know, if Glasgow get 2 good wins, they're doing pretty well. If Edinburgh can take points off Glasgow, again, it's a boost for them. Glasgow might be struggling. Glasgow had that defeat at Scarlets. So it's all kind of in the melting pot. So I do agree
and James, this is something you hear a lot in the Premiership. You'll hear, you know, the team that is bottom of the league at Christmas gets relegated, and the team that's top has an 87% chance of winning the league. And so much is decided over Christmas, New Year, because there's so many games, and it is an interesting time. And I suppose that is what makes this time of year exciting. I just wish it wasn't Edinburgh, Glasgow back to back.
How much have you thought about that 87% chance of winning the league stat as a Hibs fan? That must be getting a worry now for you.
When you think that the Ugly Sisters couldn't make things any worse along the road, and then, you know, you think they're being clawed back, and then Rangers and Celtic do their damnedest to throw everything out the window. Aye. Do you know that I can't remember who it was. Somebody did a bit of social media outside time. Was it? No, it was outside Easter Road, saying, would you rather Hearts won the league or England won the World Cup? And pretty much everybody said England won the World Cup. But it's one of those ones where you get the T-shirt of support two teams, Man City and everybody that plays against Man United, like that kind of idea. And I'm not quite sure I'm there because Rangers and Celtic. Anyway, we're getting off topic, but let's talk about Edinburgh. Oh, sorry.
Two more comments before we move to Edinburgh. Is beer served in the stadium?
It doesn't matter. You live in Seoul, so it doesn't matter.
But the answer is yes. But you're right.
Oh, hang on. I'm assuming that you're in South Korea.
Yeah, let's assume so. I'm not sure.
Imagine if we were being broadcast in North Korea. We would be literally breaking down political barriers.
I think we would be in some sort of bother quite quickly.
I've heard Kim Jong-un is an outstanding number 9. Great service off both hands. Him and I sounded like Donald Trump there.
You did. I'm worried about that. Let's move on.
Hey, remember we were called Trumpian. So.
We were once. Well, two job Townsend, and I'm going to say the phrase "two job Townsend" is definitely not one that we've come up with. Yes,
the staff are always there. They're always there.
I think. Well, to put it this way, and there was maybe a few jokes about this amongst the press pack last week. Newcastle Red Bulls were at home, and on the same night that Glasgow played Toulouse. Gregor was at Scotstoun, so let's be clear that I think Gregor will be there at the weekend.
Yes, and his assistant coaches will be there as well. Edinburgh, that looks more like what we would expect. There's the walking wounded. I mean, their injury list is pretty lengthy, but it looks like a more conventional. I don't know if is that the right conventional selection. Pierre, Ashy, Ollie Blythe, Lafferty's probably, but then they did that against Toulon, and it gives them a chance to bring on Paul Hill and stay strong across the 80 minutes. So maybe not that big a deal. Gilco's obviously there. Glenn Young's in at second row because obviously Marshall's now crocked, which is not great. But was probably the likeliest to come in for Sykesy rather than Callum Hunter-Hill. And then the back row appears to be Sean's go-to back row now.
Yeah, it seems to be. I think so. The thing with Ollie, I think, now he held his own, more than held his own in Cast at the weekend with, let's say, a second choice front five around him.
Sorry, just to jump in there. Yeah. Similar to Cammy Scott, like he'll have learned a lot from that experience.
Oh, massive amounts. I mean, the learning from the last 2 weeks for him will be massive. And like we spoke to him, when Edinburgh announced he'd signed that contract, we spoke to him and he was like, I think he said basically everything goes up a notch. The physicality is more, the speed's more, the intensity. So it will have been a step up, but it looks like he's kind of dealt with it reasonably well so far. I think the word of warning has to be that at some point, every young prop, even Xander, for as good as Xander's gone on to become, is sent in reverse or gets a scrum wrong and it looks really ugly and maybe they play, 25 minutes. But I feel like now, I remember back in the day when like Adam Jones and get hooked by Wales after 20 minutes and that felt like, and it was such a snub, but you knew that was a bit of a kick in the teeth. Whereas I think probably like Razzie's innovative style and bringing people like Boan off after 20 or 30 minutes, you do kind of get more used to it. So if that is part of the plan and Paul Hill ends up coming on in the first half, like I wouldn't be hugely surprised. And I think people should be wary of saying, oh, this kid Blythe Lafferty or Liam McConnell or whoever, Freddie Douglas, has one bad game. Let's just go back to, we've got to try these kids. But having Pierre, Ewan Ashman, Gilco around them is the best environment to do it in. So I think that definitely helps. The Dylan Richardson one's interesting because Edinburgh talked him up in the summer as having signed him as a hooker. And now it feels like he's their man at 7. I thought Freddie was one of few that came out of last week with credit. Liam was outstanding again, but it's interesting he's gone back to Dylan, and I'm not really sure where that leaves Dylan Richardson in the Scotland mix, because, you know, from the hookers that played in the autumn, Paddy Harrison's now injured, and you would think there would be a spot there, but I'm not sure if that's the case, because he's played more in the back row.
Yeah, I don't know how important that is. I suppose the only person that can answer, well, the only people that can answer that is Gregor and John DL, because as a hooker in a scrum now, you don't actually have to hook, but you have to throw. You have to throw.
Yeah,
and the throwing is the throwing is, you know, like anything, you have to be able to do it under pressure. How do you replicate pressure? Well, you play in games, training. You can train and train and train. But so yeah, especially like Freddie's obviously on the bench. You would imagine he's coming on, and would come on for Dylan Richardson, because Freddie he's not really anything else. So you're thinking he's coming on for Dylan Richardson. So I don't know, Sean pre-planned it that Paul Hill and Freddie Douglas come on at half time and go for it. I think Dylan lasts longer than 40 minutes.
Yeah.
Ewan Ashman, just there's two players in that pack. Ewan Ashman, and I don't know if it's the Lions effect, but he's just seems to have upped his, and he was already aggressive and abrasive and annoying, but he seems to have upped that. I think he's been really, really strong, and people used to point the finger at his throwing, and, you know, hookers will probably tell you, oh no, but it's not just the throw, it's the whole thing. Jumpers will tell you it was the thrower, but that seems to be going well, and I think Magnus Bradbury has been absolutely outstanding, not just as number 8, but as captain.
Yeah, I think we talked about Magnus last week. I think he's been brilliant. I think he looks like the player, more like the player that was at Bristol. I kind of wondered at times last season, would Edinburgh get that out of him? They have done that this year. I think he's looked kind of closer to his best. And
I think the captaincy thing's helped, though.
I think it's massively helped, but I also think he's got that point to prove, almost that chip on his shoulder.
But I think the captaincy has been added to that. I think it's kind of not grow up, Magnus, but look, we believe in you, Magnus. We can see that you're more than, because one of the things that gets levelled at him is, oh, he's just a straight up and down number 8. Well, aye, and he's not trying to be someone he's not, and he's a very, very good straight up and down number 8. But I think his leadership and the way he speaks and the determination he's got, I think that those 2 years in Bristol, I think, were really good for him. But I think, and it helps that he's now got, you know, Gilco's still in the pack and running the line out and takes that responsibility. And Gilco doesn't need to be called captain. Ewan Ashman's there. Pierre's a leader, just in a slightly different way. So he's got a group of people around him, and I think that helps. The back line, you mentioned Ben Velicott when we were talking about the number 9s. The back line is not really settled, but I think if you were picking a back line, you're not far off the first choice Edinburgh back line there.
Yeah, you're not. You're right. I think...
But Ben Velicott is the first choice scrum half.
He is.
Cammy Scott has become the first choice stand. Yeah. He wasn't at the start of the season, but he is now. Duan, Darcy, Wes, and I think you would say Matt Curry if he hadn't had the worst luck of any rugby player. Piers O'Connor obviously was signed as a bit of a Swiss Army knife. Where do we need him to play? And, you know, we'll flick it open, and that's where you need to go, Piers. So I think you and I are both fans of Langer, so I think James Lang is probably the first choice 12, but I don't think that's far away from a first choice Edinburgh backline, which means we've got backline against backline.
Yeah, and I mean, take out one centre, and there may be different quality, but take out Hugh Jones from Glasgow and James Lang from Edinburgh, and you would probably have Josh Mackay might have different thoughts, but you could have their the two first choice back
divisions. So
you know,
15. But what's interesting is that's the first choice. Wes obviously isn't a Scotland international yet. Darcy's a British Lion. Matt Curry's a Scotland international and will be a Lion. Duan's a Lion. Cammy Scott's not a Scotland international. Ben Velicott is.
Yes.
So you've got two backlines going against each other with 12 of the 14 being Scotland internationals.
Yeah, which is, I suppose, this is where you then start to see the short-term benefit to a long-term plan with Nusafora wanting fewer non-Scottish qualified guys, because the guys who aren't Scotland internationals could be.
Oh, sorry. 11, because Wes Hewson's not a Scotland international. I was counting Cammy Scott and Pearce. But Wes, there's a high chance that in 2026, Wes Hewson will be a Scotland international.
And we say the same thing for 2027 and Josh Mackay. So actually, Pearce is the only guy there with no prospect of playing for Scotland. And similarly, you look at the forwards, and if they're not all capped, they all could play for Scotland.
So there's only Ollie who's not capped in that Edinburgh pack. Glasgow are all capped, is that right? Macbeth, Hiddleston.
Gregor Hiddleston's no caps, but he's...
Oh, that's right. He didn't. He was the sort of surprise omission from the summer tour, wasn't he?
Yes, he was. And Johnny Matthews.
Johnny Matt, yes, please keep that. Let's keep beating that drum. Let's jump to the bench. So Harry Morris, obviously Paddy Harrison's injured and Dylan Richardson's wearing 7, which means Harry Morris gets in. And I don't know the Glasgow hookers, but the Edinburgh hookers, and let me clarify this after I've said it, they're an absolute nuisance, like annoying humans.
Yes.
Ewan Ashman, Paddy Harrison, Harry Morris, and I don't know Dylan Richardson, but the three of them are quite often, if you speak to the players, they'll like, who brought the intensity of training? Oh, Paddy Harrison was going about smacking folk. Oh, Harry Morris was getting up off the line. It's quite often the hookers that seem to be the really annoying, like physical, niggly, up for it, making everyone a competition, and I love that. So, and Harry, a bit like when I commented about Cammy Scott before, like Harry Morris has actually been around for a while.
Yeah, he has been.
He's just not been able to get a shot.
And I think he's another guy who'll look at this and say, right, well, I don't have much to lose here.
In fact, did he not get Player of the Week for Melrose, and the following week
played for Scotland?
Yeah, or within like 2 weeks.
2 weeks he played, but he played in that USA game, and people raised eyebrows, and I include myself in that. I didn't see that selection coming in a million years, but
I don't think any of us did.
But he didn't. And I know the caveats are the opposition were terrible, but he didn't look out of place, and he stepped into that Edinburgh team this season, and I haven't thought, he looks like a guy who's potentially 4th choice. So I think
he's confident. He's a confident kid, and he's been a bit like Cammy Scott. It's like, just give me a shot. Like, put me in, coach. Put me in. And there's been a lot of people in front of him, and people love to give it the all. But front row, you have to. They don't care how old they are. They just want to play rugby.
Yeah, exactly. I think my caveat about the Edinburgh bench.
You've had a lot of caveats today.
Would be, I have. Maybe I'm thinking of caviar. I haven't had any of that.
Oh, there you go. There you go. Scotland Rugby use wages, eh?
I wish. I think the bit that interests me, Bohan gives you good impact. Paul Hill could shore up a scrum if he needs to. There are a few guys. Callum Hunter-Hill is a solid player, but he's not going to give you masses of. Callum Hunter-Hill isn't turning a game round. Ross Thompson, similarly, is steady, solid, dependable, but has looked like he's maybe lost a bit of his confidence. Conor McAlpine's been given a chance as the backup 9. That's a big call because he's a young guy. Charlie Shields got a load more experience. Matt Davidson is the backs cover, the outside back cover, having come back off the sevens. Again, it's a massive game to throw him into, and
you're not in Dubai now, son.
Yeah, and how many minutes is he getting? There's conceivably two guys I can see sitting on the Edinburgh bench for 75 minutes if the game's close. Whereas the Glasgow bench just looks like it packs that bit more punch, a lot more punch. So I think if it's close with 15 minutes to go, Franco can say, okay, I'm going to send on Gregor Brown and Talakai and Alex Craig and Dan Lancaster.
Yeah, I hear you. I think the front row is impactful and could potentially all come. I don't think they will all come on at the same time, but because I think Hilly will come on at half time. I don't think
you're a big fan of that half time sub.
Who is?
You.
No, but that's what he does, or that's what he did, and
yeah,
I kind of feel like Paul Hill's too good not to play.
Yeah, no, I agree.
And he's quite when he ball carries, he's a really awkward, like he's quite tall, long-legged, long stride, kicks out of tackles. Like he looks horrific to try and put down. He's a big, awkward, and the boys give him jip because he's a bit of a weirdo, but he's a lovely guy. He's really funny. He shared a flat with Ben Muncaster when he first came up to Edinburgh before his wife and kid and dog moved in, and I think he got a bit of fright when he had to go back to domesticated life, having lived with a big golden retriever for about 3 weeks.
I imagine that'd be pretty interesting.
I think Hilly's too good. It's a bit like Bohan, but when you've got Pierre there, and Pierre going up against Xander is obviously a bit of a battle. Freddie, I think, comes on for Dylan Richardson. I'm not sure what the difference is other than fresh.
Yeah.
Conor McAlpine. Sorry, go for it.
I was just going to say Freddie's better over the ball. Dylan gives you definitely more carrying and more punch. But, Freddie Douglas won four turnovers at the weekend in a team that were, let's be honest, were really struggling. And he looks like so comfortable when he gets in that position over the ball. I just think, oh well, just give the penalty now, ref. And the refs make players hang on for 2 or 3 seconds, and but there's just absolutely no moving Freddie. So I'm interested in to see how that skill set is used in the last. Just as I say, I just hope by the time these guys are ready to come on, there's still something in it.
Yeah, I think so. And like Callum Hunter-Hill, I like the way he's been away and learnt his trade, and he's come back, and I hope he does get a decent shot. I'm interested to see what happens with Matt Davidson and Ross Thompson. Conor McAlpine, I'm a big fan of. I'm not sure what happens, but yeah, it's going to be interesting. I can't call this game. Head says Glasgow, of course it does, but it just feels like that Toulon result has really put the head in a spin about what is actually possible for Edinburgh. News: Scottish women have announced their new head coach, Sione Fukufaka. Am I right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll take that.
Fuka. Yeah. Look, we'll get a chance to speak to him in the new year. When he takes
I've heard people that have worked with him saying good guy. Nice guy, going to work well. I think there's an assistant coach to be announced soon. Is that right?
Yeah, there'll be a couple of assistants, I think, announced probably in the early new year. But look, he's Australian, was the head coach of America at the World Cup. I know the reaction has been a bit mixed on social media. I've seen people talk about Giselle Mather and Johan Cunningham and Joe Yap, and all those names were kind of in the mix. And Sione's name maybe came from a wee bit of left field, but I wonder if there is a pre-existing relationship, and I'm speculating on this, if there's a pre-existing relationship with David Nucifora, if he's somebody that Nucifora was aware of, So yeah, it'll be interesting to speak to him and see, because obviously this could be a massive period of change with all how the contracts have all been divvied up and whatnot. So I am interested to see how he gets on. But yeah, so he arrives. His contract is to the 2029 World Cup, and he's due to take up the post officially and move to Scotland and at some point in the new year.
Well, good. Well, I hope it goes well. There's lots to come, and obviously Edinburgh and Glasgow women kick off soon, so plenty to get excited about. Good to see you, big fella. Thank you for that. A final word from our sponsor. The Scotland Rugby News podcast was brought to you by S1 Jobs. If it's time to hand in your transfer request, then head over to s1jobs.com and upload your CV right now. There are thousands of jobs all across Scotland, and you can find the one for you at S1 Jobs. So go on, start your search today. Enjoy it, big fella. Good to see you. Merry Christmas when it comes. Enjoy Hampden, and speak to you soon. Cheers, folks. Look after yourself. Have a great Christmas. Thanks for your support so far this year.